Come on, stay with him. Come on, this is one of those moments. Come on.
So last year was my first BWR San Diego. I had actually wanted to do this race all through my triathlon career as well. It's the oldest BWR event. It's been going on a while. But every year it was the same weekend as Oceanside 70.3. So came out last year and put together a good day, and I was able to cross the line first and take that title. So I've had that title for the last year, and now that title defense is up tomorrow. So certainly one that, when I looked at my calendar for the year, wanted to put a good foot forward at and really try to hold on to that title if possible. This event, BWR San Diego, was definitely one of the early events I plotted into my calendar, but it was also in the context of June. And in June, I have Unbound, a 200-mile gravel race, and then Western States, a 100-mile trail race. And those two were the first ones on the calendar. Those two I put out there last year. I wanted to show up at those two and try to do well at both. I had some tough days at both, and we are 6 weeks out from Unbound, and it's going to be a hard day. Lots of climbing, a good close to 7-hour effort. It's going to be somewhere 6.5 to 7 hours. Unbound's usually around that 11-hour mark. So just a long, hard day, 6 weeks out. And to see where the fitness is at this point, then I'll return to Tucson, and we've got basically one training block left leading into Unbound. So it's a good kind of benchmark. Then I can kind of recover and put my head down and put in that final 3 to 4 weeks of hard work to prep for Unbound. So that's kind of how it fits in with the next kind of 2 months, which will be the busiest of the year and kind of the biggest of the year, if you will. When I picked up my number today and I actually have number 1, all of a sudden I felt a lot of pressure. So earlier I was just saying to myself, pressure is a privilege. It's a privilege to have that spot and to wear number 1 tomorrow. And I'll just try to make the most of it and maybe work that 1% harder to try to keep it and defend it. There was a group up the road, and then there was our main pack that we had a pretty good group, probably 20 or 30 of us on the road. And we were together that whole first road stretch until the first single track part. And as predicted, it broke up in there, just with everyone stringing out, a couple slide outs, a couple people having to unclip on some of the steep uphill parts that just kind of, breaks things up. And this year, that dirt stretch was longer than last year. Last year, we were on the road a bit longer. So, by the time we got back towards Lake Hodges and where the trail widens a bit, and it's not as much single track, where you can kind of move up in those parts because it's wide enough, I had already, kind of been gapped from some women up the road. And so then it was, got through the single track part and tried to work my way up on kind of that wider path along Lake Hodges all the way as we headed east. I had broken the race up in my head into different chunks, and that was kind of the first chunk because I knew that I would see Wadi for our first planned feed right around mile 30-ish, 32. Cecily, myself, and then there was a group of probably 4 or 5 guys around us as well. I heard coming through from Wadi, she was in 5th and I was right behind her in 6th. Section 2 of the day was the Sandy Bandy kind of double track out there into this climb, into this descent where you're on this kind of horse path along a road before the next road section.
Look, get that group up ahead! Up ahead!
I started Highland Valley climb with Cecily and one other guy. We kind of got up the first super steep stretch away from the pack behind us, and it ended up being just the 3 of us starting that climb together. We were all kind of taking pulls, and then at one point, as it kind of pitched up, Cecily kind of became detached, dropped back a little bit, and then I kept dangling off the back of this other guy we had been riding with, and I would just fight to get back up to him. And
go ahead! Whit and Ellen are right there.
Yeah, he ended up being a critical part of the day for me, because when you have someone to really try to stay with or chase that wheel or just have that carrot ahead of you to stay with, I think you can dig just that little bit deeper. Just saying to yourself, like, don't get dropped, like, stay with him. And so to have him on that Highland Valley road climb was a critical part of my day, because I think he pushed me that much more. And I was riding in 5th. We got up to 3rd and 4th, who were Whit Allison and Emily Newsom. And they were together on that climb as well. And we kind of caught them, as we crested Highland Valley climb.
Nailed it. Nice.
The gravel racing's interesting because everyone starts together, which is what makes the events cool. Like, it's one mass start, but that is men and women. So the women's field is racing at the front is a little bit different dynamics than, say, the men's field. I've had all scenarios play out across all different races in terms of finding myself isolated and alone and riding, and then having other women towed up to me by a group of men from behind, where they're getting that pull, that help of a peloton, riding in a peloton, where I've been just alone trying to ride myself. And I've also had, like yesterday, different instances where I've found myself with groups of men and fighting to stay in that and getting the help of that, being in that sort of group. It is just the dynamics of gravel racing right now. It is critical in determining how the race day goes. Long, probably 2 or 3 mile kind of switchbacky road descent. At that point, I was still with Emily and Whit. I think we were riding in 4th, 5th, and 6th. We pre-rode the course the day before, both down the hill and up the hill. So I kind of knew in my head what the descent was like, and I knew the corners. I don't know what came over me, but I was like, went full send on that descent down. I also knew I wanted to try to get into the single track at the far end of that out and back first. So on that climb back up, I knew Wadi was waiting at the top with another bottle. I also knew the climb, again, having done it the day before. And I also could see a group up the road. They were maybe a minute or so up the road. And since the climb, everyone's kind of going slower and it was this wide exposed area, I could see them. And so I'm like, this is another critical part of that day. If I can get into a group for that kind of falls flat, climbing back up out of Ramona before the descent down back towards Escondido, like that would be key to be with a group because it's exposed, it's windy, you're on the road, there's no hiding. If you're alone there versus being in a group, it's night and day. So I put a really big effort in up that Pama Road climb to bridge up to the group I could see up the road. I was able, just past the top of the climb, I was able to bridge up. Again, there were a couple guys also just off the back, so the three of us were able to bridge up to that bigger group that had third place riding in it, Courtney Sherwell. Just at the end of that final dirt stretch before you pop back onto Del Dios Highway, I was able to get within 5 seconds or so of her. And then we also, at that point, caught on to Caroline Resin, who had been riding in second the whole day, who, hadn't known who was in second. I know Sophia, and I'm like, okay, there's someone else up the road. And then I've raced Caroline all last year. And so the three of us were together, climbing out of Lake Hodges onto Del Dios Highway and kind of heading back towards what I knew was going to be the critical part of the day, the final major climbs.
Behind you.
I saw Wadi for the final feed at the top of Del Dios. I was in a group with Caroline and Courtney, and then there were probably, 5 or 6 guys. We were all in a group heading through Elephant Forest back towards the final it's basically one long climb, but it's 2 sections. You have Quest Haven Road, which has a dirt sector, and then you pop back up onto the San Elijo Road, and then you make that left and climb up Double Peak, which is just insane. There's a part where you have to dismount your bike and get over this little barrier before the climb starts, and I went into that first, again, trying to be strategic and just get over it and maybe get that little extra second or two, but I put in an effort for about, a minute or so, and then all of a sudden, Caroline and Courtney came spinning by me like they were on a flat, and we were probably on a 20% grade, and I was like, oh no. So they got me there, but I also, having done it last year, knew how long the climb is. I also know that anything can happen. I had been having some cramps in my legs, you get those sudden twinges of like, oh my God, this could be really bad. And then I would chug my hydration. So in my mind, I was saying that could happen to them. Like they could blow up, they could be going too hard right now. Anything could happen. There was still, even though they had dropped me at that point, I could still see them up the road. So it was just, stay with it because you don't know, anything could happen.
Come on, you need anything? Coke? Beer? Yes. Modelo time!
Literally the best part of the day. I get to the top of Double Peak, and Alejandro Valverde, a fellow canyon rider, he's on Movistar. He's literally one of the best cyclists of all time. I had the opportunity to meet him the day before at a canyon group ride we did out of the canyon headquarters, but he meets thousands of people a day probably. Like, I did not expect him to remember me. I literally said hi and got a photo with him like the little starstruck super fan that I am. He and his buddy that he rides with, or was riding with, Dario, they came up to me and they're like, oh, Heather, and said hi and pointed to the back of their wheel for me to get on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm riding with Valverde. He had struggled all day with flat tires, and I think just made the most of the day riding and saying hi to people out there, and just, really good spirit considering he struggled with that obviously on his day, which was the only reason he was back where I was, let's be clear. But to be able to ride through that final dirt part with them and then descend down San Elijo, which is a long, fast descent. I mean, they were tucked in on their top tubes, just like down, and I'm just like behind them. Like, I'm descending at 40 miles an hour on Valverde's wheel.
Heather Jackson across the line. There you go, Heather, last year's winner.
Who gets to do that? That was just, incredible for me. I mean, I'm a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of cycling. I watch all the races. Obviously, he's just one of the best in the world, and it was just, for me, a super cool experience that he would, one, remember me, two, just be that considerate and kind, and give me that experience on the day. So that was really, really cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I won this race last year, and it's one of those things like, okay, defend your title. But this racing, I mean, it's so different. Every race, anything can happen. Fourth on the day, but the fact that I moved up all day long, I feel like I fought all day long. I was with second and third until that final climb. So I had put myself in that position to possibly fight for even further up on the podium. It didn't happen on the day, but I was stoked with just how the legs felt. They felt the best all year long. The first couple of races I did this season, I was, not really happy with kind of where the fitness was, or just, I guess, how maybe we led into the race. This one I tapered for. I rested this last week. I wanted to come into this one fresh. Having done that and seeing how I felt, I was happy. I'm happy with where I'm at now. We are 6 weeks out from Unbound, and it gives me a good idea of some of the things I think I definitely need to continue working on in the next month. I was happy with how it played out yesterday, and fourth on the day. I mean, I'm stoked. It's fourth. It's not winning it again. It's not defending, but I was up there, and that's, for me, that's a huge result. I'm happy. So.